What's going on, everyone? So there's nothing like a good horror movie. Whether you're watching it at home with the family, with the loved one, whether you're going to the movie theaters to experience that, anxiety of buildup of like the shock and the scare, even if it's something that doesn't scare you, it's still very entertaining. And although horror is very niche compared to some of these big blockbuster films and things like Marvel, horror is still such a big fixture in the movie space, right? Nothing's better than when you're surprised by a quality horror film and when you see that a studio and a writing team and production really takes the time to flesh out a high quality horror film, right? I mean, some of the most iconic films in history are horror movies. Think of things like The Exorcist. I mean, even the original classic Scream. But we're in this age of horror that there's just no real risks, right? Even the classics, Scream, right? Like, yes, they created these new installments and we're about to get a Scream 7. And look, I've built this channel on Scream, but they just have kind of fallen into the same trap that Hollywood keeps falling into when it comes to horror films. And that's basically making remakes or carbon copies. I mean, Scream 5 was essentially Scream 96 refleshed out in a modern era. And even Scream 6 was very reminiscent of Scream 2. Instead of taking Ghostface and taking a new story and a new spin, not saying you have to divert from the, foundation of it, but give us some creative just storytelling with Ghostface. The beauty of Ghostface is it's not a Michael Myers. It's not a Jason Voorhees. It's not a Freddy Krueger where, when one of them die in a film, that's it, right? You have to basically restart and go, well, maybe not so much Freddy, but guys like Michael. We have so many different various timelines and so many various just remakes of that film because it's one guy. So as soon as you basically write him dead, then that's it. Now you got to regroup and create a new off branch. But something like Scream, you don't have to do. You have a character that is the villain that is always somebody different, and it could be anybody under that mask. And instead of embracing that and going, hey, here's a fresh take, which hopefully they do in Scream 7, we'll see, but there's just this need in Hollywood to just keep pumping out remakes, and then Hollywood is shocked and surprised that they're not having the success that they once were, right? They're not making money. You look at the films and yeah, you might see, oh man, this film made 160 million, but it didn't really make any actual money. Like if you adjust for inflation and stuff, movies are doing terrible. And that's a real issue. But then these studios complain but they don't want to take any risks. It's just, let's remake these iconic classics like The Exorcist. And that movie was so bad, they ended up firing everybody, and they're supposed to make 2 more films. Why do we need an Exorcist film? They've made other Exorcists, and Exorcism of Emily Rose was brilliant. That was great, an enjoyable film. Why do you have to throw on the stamp of The Exorcist and mess up what future installments did? They've tried that numerous times, and it doesn't work. But now what? It's supposed to work? And I mean, you can go down the list. The Crow is coming out with the new thing. The Blair Witch Project. They're remaking Nosferatu again. It's like every day we're getting word that another remake or another requel or another this or that is just being remade. And it's like, why? Like, where is the excitement? Where is the freshness? Yes, there is an inherent fan base and people, and there is this curiosity. I mean, even myself, when I see The Crow, I'm like, okay, how is this going to be? But more times than not, they're just complete flops, and they're just almost a waste of time 90% of the time. There are great remakes. We've seen some, like It. I thought the remake of It, did a good job. One that just comes to mind immediately. Right? There are the Halloween, right? The Halloween, the 18, like that one I actually enjoyed. Halloween Kills, I wasn't huge. People kind of seem split on that one. But Halloween Ends, like the consensus was that movie was terrible, right? And it's because they tried to tell a story of mine, but it's just, why? You could have just created and spent the money and spent the time to just create a different thing, right? Create something different. We're getting a remake of Blair Witch. I just talked about it yesterday. Go check out that video if you didn't watch it. And it's like, why? Why do we need another Blair Witch? Why not They're doing a reimagining, a new adaptation of the Blair Witch. Why? Why do you need to do that? Like, Blumhouse is a big culprit in this regard, where they just seem to love to just remake and make requels and sequels to classics. And they're looking at it as like, okay, well, we're creating this this new off branch, kind of like they did with Next of Kin. Like, okay, I actually enjoyed Next of Kin. I thought that was a good idea, but it was a franchise in which there was this anthology to it. Right? Some of the films, yes, tied into one another, but some of the films were just completely different things. Like the marked ones, all this stuff. You could get away with that. It made sense, right? To have this off branch of a Paranormal Activity film and kind of go a different direction, because you already had these various stories throughout that weren't necessarily a part of the original story. So it was kind of this anthology thing. Something like Saw. You're seeing Saw even realize, like, oh, we got to kind of go back to John Kramer. And look, I enjoyed Saw X, but it's like, how long can they keep using John Kramer and Tobin Bell as the main character and kind of going back into films, right? It's just, I don't know what the answer is other than, some originality. Now, look, there have been some original films. There have been films that they have created, but it's like, what is it? Night Swim. Like, that sounded like a terrible, a haunted pool that, it's like, there's good ideas and then there's bad ideas. And then they greenlight a bad idea and then expect people, see, this is why people don't like modern horror. See, we can't be fresh. We can't because, Halloween does good, right? But we tried to make this original film and it was terrible. And it's like, because the idea was terrible. The story was terrible. The characters were terrible. Everything about the film was terrible. It's not because people don't like originality in horror. It's because they're terrible. I mean, look at things like Terrifier. People love Terrifier. We're getting another Terrifier, right? Like, there have been things. A Malignant is one that comes to mind. Malignant was solid. Like, was it the greatest movie ever? No, but it was a fresh take with an interesting twist that was a little odd, a little out there, and you're just kind of like, what happened to the days of Insidious, and like movies like that? Why are we going and just rehashing the same old rhetoric over and over and over again? Is it a writer problem? Is it a studio problem? Is it, what is it? What seems to be the problem? Even things like Barbarian come to mind. Right? Like, again, I wasn't super big on Barbarian. I know a lot of people really liked it. Me personally, I kind of thought it was a little silly, but I appreciated the originality. I appreciated the fresh take. Another one. Oh, speaking of fresh, right? Like, that I thought was a great idea, right? Where they've had these creative films, these, horror / action type suspense thrillers. Right? We've had these things where it's like, okay, these are very interesting stories. These are original. Okay, I like this. Right? Now, a lot of the originality ones are kind of these like far out, crazy, like, whoa, like you think of like Barbarian and stuff. But still, again, I can appreciate and value the originality and the fresh take. I can appreciate and value the different adaptation. Like, again, you can do, if you want to do an Exorcist film, do a creative, entertaining Exorcist film that's telling stories that, we haven't necessarily seen, right? Or it's just, I mean, how many different zombie movies have there been out? And some of them are great, right? You see like series and stuff like that are well received, that are just basically the same film as something else. I get that, there's very likely not an idea that hasn't been done. But it's, again, about the writing, the story, the execution, the delivery, the overall scope of the film. It's not just as simple as like, hey, let's throw on the tag of The Exorcist and people will go. Yes, people will go, but unless that's a home run, knock it out of the park type remake, everyone's like, oh, that movie was trash and it was so bad you had to fire David Gordon Green. And it's just, again, it's the definition of insanity. You do something over and over and over again, expecting a different result, but you keep getting the same. Like, And then they want to blame the audience, or you see actors and actresses, oh, it's because they don't like, the people don't like it. No, they didn't like the movie. They didn't like the story. It has nothing to do with you or nothing to do with the fact that it's this or that or the other. It's because the movie was awful. It has nothing to do with that. I mean, Marvel's kind of became a great example of just sabotage. Right? They had their target audience. They had their core audience, right? And then, people woke or whatever you want to call it, they go and they decide to go in this direction and alienate and isolate a lot of their audience. And now people don't care anymore. Now and Marvel's, oh man, all this stuff. It's like, no, it's because you had a very simple blueprint formula that worked and you decided to go off of it. You decided to go a different direction that you should have known wasn't going to work and make sense, right? Again, and that's how I feel about horror. It's like they have people love horror movies. People love to feel that angst and anxiety and all that stuff when you're watching a film, right? Like in a lot of ways, it's just the simplicity of it all. And you don't have to be this super creative. Just tell a good story with good characters. Like, what happened to storytelling? What happened to story building? What happened to character development and character building? I mean, nowadays, movies in general, just don't seem to really, care so much about building characters and establishing flow. It's very frustrating. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you agree with me? Do you feel like, Hollywood's kind of messing with horror and it's not what it used to be? Again, we were getting so many, look at the 90s and 2000s, right? Even some of the terrible movies were still enjoyable because they were different, right? And a lot of them were just remakes. I mean, how many Scream adaptations came out after the original Scream? And some of them were great. Urban Legends, I Know What You Did Last Summer, right? They were the same thing, right? How many different ways can you do a slasher film? But guess what? We still love us some good old-fashioned slasher films. Why? Because they're simplistic in its sense, the whodunit, the mystery. It doesn't have to be necessarily, I want them to keep doing Screams, but you don't have to remake classics, right, is my point. But anyway, again, how do you feel? Love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So when you enjoy these types of videos, I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.